Chronicles TV on air. We are now live in 3, 2, 1.
I despise my life growing up. I despise my life growing up. Those slums are vile places. I was cursed from birth, born into poverty, the son of a penniless artisan. My parents did nothing but quarrel all day long. What little money they had has never spent on me. So I set about studying to be better myself, to one day escape from the hellhole. And you eventually become communications officer. I admire your determination. But then you decide to try to sell government secrets. Why? Isn't it obvious? Because I wanted money. Even now, years later, the nightmares of my life in the slums wake me in the small hours. I wanted to drown them out with more money than anyone who lived in the squalor could ever imagine. Then one day I met him. Mr. Magnus McGilded.
But who set the fire?
You're a fiend with a core talent, so you are. I've money to throw your way if you're interested. All you need to do is go along with me little plan now. It was to steal the ministry's telegraphic message logs, and McGilded would buy them for a handsome sum. As I was responsible for inspections of the ministry's communication office, it was a simple enough task. So to the Lord of the Devil's offerings, how easy to succumb. But you must surely have realized the seriousness of the crime you were committing. And for that reason, I took great lengths to ensure that my actions were untraceable. By using the music box. My father was a brickmaker, though. My mother divorced him when I was still a child.
Yes, Mr. Mason Milverton.
That's right, he was very skilled with his hands. He once had a music box maker's apprentice. I imagine his skills would be sufficient to create a machine that could generate Morse code, so I sought out my father again to employ his services. It was the first time I see him since I left the slums 10 years earlier. Look at you, Ashley. What a fine gent you become, eh? He was a different man to the one in my memory. A thin, frail old man. But poverty had never broken him, never corrupted him like it had me. I'm sure that he wouldn't help me if I told him the real reason. So I made up a story. I've got some work for you, Father. I need some music box disc made.
Music box disc, eh?
A musician friend of mine has written some music he wants to sell to the public. I brought the score with me. There are 2 actually. I've been delighted, John. It's been 20 years since I did any work like this, though. Fetch my tools, would you? They're in the loft. That's how I had him make the 2 discs. Thereby splitting the information in 2. You were taking considerable precautions indeed. It was to protect myself as much as anything. It meant that I could deal with McGilded in 2 separate transactions. The first involved the first of the 2 discs and the music box for playing them. I exchanged them with McGilded for 10 guineas. Then on receipt on the second disc, he would pay 1,000 guineas. So what happened on the omnibus 2 months ago was the second part of the deal, the exchange of the second disc. Yes, I sold the man information that way a number of times already, but it seems he became reluctant to part with his money.
But that doesn't quite make sense, Mr. Graydon. For why was it that the omnibus 2 months ago, your father, Mr. Milverton, was the one dealing with McGilded, and not yourself?
When I received 1,000 guineas after my first completed dealings with McGilded, I decided to give 200 to my father for his troubles. But my father realized something was amiss. In time, he worked out that I must be involved with something dubious, and when he did, he said to me,
"Next time there's an exchange, you'll let your old man do it, understand? and otherwise I won't take your money anymore.
That was my father's way of dealing with it, I suppose. Climb into the omnibus, hand over the second disc, and take the money from McGill. That's it. He had no idea what was actually on the disc I asked him to make. He never knew. Just like I'll never knew why everything went so horribly wrong that night. All I know is that the disc was taken from him, and he never returned home. It was only then I found out what sort of monster McGill really was. So after 10 years of not once uttering it, I swore on my father's name. To exact revenge. Revenge? As anyone with even the remotest knowledge of the man would no doubt be able to imagine, McGill brought all his wealth and influence to bear in the most despicable of ways. To crush any semblance of justice in his trial. The crime scene was tampered with, evidence was fixed, and witnesses were bribed. That trial 2 months ago was a farce from the start to finish. My feet had barely touched British soil back then, and I walked into the hornet's nest, completely unaware of the sinister background at all. I made plenty of money out of my dealings with McGill by then, so I spared nothing in my arrangements 2 months ago. I knew exactly who to hire. If you're willing to pay the price, there are people in this city willing to do anything you ask. McGill himself had shown me that. Are you saying that? I think you have the picture now? After he twisted everything to his favor in this courtroom to ensure that he walked free, I took matters into my own hands and delivered the justice the monster deserved. That tragic accident following the trial over here 2 months ago was planned and executed by yours truly. McGillard's death that day was caused by this man?
Everything is ready, sir, if you'd like to follow me into the courtroom.
What's this, officer? 'Tis sooner than I let believe.
I hope it's not inconvenient, sir. There was some changes to the schedule.
Well, I must be making tracks now. This time for the inspection. They're going to examine the omnibus again, so I'm told. I asked if I could present it to myself. So that policeman who came to tell McGill that he could examine the omnibus again. That's right, an imposter, hired by me. Mr. McGill used his wealth to manipulate the trial. He paid people to adulterate the omnibus with all manner of false evidence. He threatened witnesses to lie in their testimony. So I gave the man a taste of his own medicine. Once the omnibus was doused in paraffin, one of my sham policemen ushered McGill inside and set him in a one-way journey to hell. An eye for an eye. That's how I avenged my father's death.
A spine-chilling account indeed.
But that wasn't the end of it for me. There was a loose end, you see. A loose end? Yes, I should think it's obvious. The second disc, which my father had taken to exchange with McGill.
Ah, yes. There was indeed no mention of it in the man's trial 2 months ago. Clearly because it has been removed from the scene of the crime.
When I realized it was missing, I remembered something. Something from the first time I dealt with McGill. This is the first of the 2 discs of the music box you need to play them. Well, look at that now. What an ingenious little invention. So then, as promised, 10 guineas for ye young men. What's this? Wendy Bake's pawnbrokery? Ah, this is a pawnbrokery ticket, so it is. Ye can use it to redeem an article I deposited there for ye. There's no need to give it a name, just hand over the ticket and tell the fiend the watchword. I put a jewel in pawn for ye. It'll fetch a good 10 guineas if you sell it, so it will. I've never heard of pawnbrokery being used in quite that way before. Have ye not, Mr. Graydon? London's pawnbrokeries are very useful places, you know. Each one is like an extremely secure vault. So I knew that if he'd taken steps to hide the disc, it would be in the pawnbrokery somewhere. And on that night he killed my father, he must have entrusted the ticket to someone. Yes, to Genia. I remembered it now, that when I first met you at the Windy Bank in the afternoon 2 days ago, you had the description of Miss Lestrade written down. How did you know who you were looking for? From that trial, that pickpocket's testimony was clearly peculiar. Anyone could see that. I realized immediately that she was another McGilded's pawns, that he must have threatened her somehow. I was fairly convinced it would be her who had the ticket, so I started to make some inquiries. I had a strong suspicion the girl would come out of the woodwork of the redemption deadline, and he was absolutely right. And yes, sure enough she did. All I needed was to wait until the girl went to the winning bank to redeem the articles. But unfortunately, she redeemed only McGilded's overcoat and the one disc that was in the pocket. The all-important music box was the second disc inside missing, because it had already been forfeited 2 days earlier. But I was unaware of that fact. Had I not been, I could have avoided my nighttime excursion.
Meanwhile, as our investigation into the stolen government secrets was progressing, we picked up on the fact that McGilda was involved.
Inspector, you've recovered fast.
My orders were to recover stolen information as quickly as possible. We started gathering the fellow's possession and examined whatever we could lay our hands on. We had a full-scale investigation going on in the yard, but we had to keep it as quiet as we could.
Then, when the inspector here took the disc from me in the pawn bakery, but that day I became nervous. I was sure the music box and the second disc were still there in the shop somewhere, so I knew it was a race against time. I had to find those articles before the police did. So that's what prompted me to break into the place that same night, with the help of your old friends, the Skulkin brothers. What happened that night in the pawnbrokery, I can only describe as a nightmare. While Nash and Ringo were searching for the counter, I located the music box I sold to McGilda on the shelf of forfeited articles. And the second disc was inside? Yes, I slipped into my pocket a very deep sigh of relief. But then, something entirely unexpected happened. A gunshot rang out of the shop and I felt a sharp pain in my left arm.
The broker fired his gun and the bullet pierced your limb.
Yes, exactly. But unfortunately, I decided to bring my own gun with me that night, just in case. Before I knew what was happening, I fired back. The man had already turned to flee. I hadn't intended to fire in his direction, much less killed him. But unfortunately for both of us, the bullet hit home. It struck him in the middle of his back as he fled through the storeroom door for refuge.
A sorry, sorry tale.
It all took place in a blink of an eye. I don't imagine Nash and Ringo even realized what had happened at first. I was terrified, so I fled. And that's the whole story. That everything that happened at Windy Banks on the wretched night.
Earlier, you called Mr. McGill a monster. A man who uses wealth and influence to distort the facts and escape justice for the crime of murder. What tragic irony, for what you have done is exactly the same. You've become the very monster you saw and despised so deeply in McGilded.
Yes, I think I have.
Well, this has been a long and exhausting trial. However, it would seem that at last we have arrived at the truth. Inspector Grayson, what of Mr. Ashley Graydon? He's been restrained, my lord, and is escorted to the yard. He'll be charged with murder of Mr. Windybake and the stealing of government secrets. Very good. And you, Inspector, regrettably, you will have to face charges yourself. Yes, my lord, of course. And transpires that you were complicit in helping a criminal escape justice. That fact remains, whether or not you are doing so in the line of duty. The crime is a serious one, Inspector, an inexcusable one. Now to the defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade.
Yeah?
It's time for the final ejection. The jury ready, Mr. Foreman? Yes, sir. Garrett Squadron, standing by, sir. This is really it now. Last push, the final call, the finishing whistle. My men are ready to deliver the verdicts. Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Very well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. You will now declare your final decisions to the court.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty. Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Aha, that's a stop. I'm off the hook. Finally, Runo, you finally managed to do it. Finally is the word. I really wasn't sure we'd come out on top for a while. Susie was right. You're the best lawyer in the world.
Miss Lestrade, I have not finished with you yet.
Eh? What are you looking at me like that for?
Before you start enjoying your freedom, there are certain other crimes to consider, 2 months ago, in my courtroom no less, you gave false testimony, did you not? And in relation to the trial today, not only did you unlawfully enter Windybeck's pawnbrokery, you also attempt to abscond with Mr. McGill's property, it seems.
I never done nothing of the sort. Of course not. It's not like you were gleefully wearing McGilda's coat in your cell yesterday or anything. Aww, and just when I was getting excited about throwing a party for Jeannie this evening.
And turning our attention to defense, determining that when played together, the music box disc containing a message in Morse code was, well, it was certainly a most unexpected revelation, counsel. Quite so, my lord. The prosecution was caught entirely off guard. In fact, I think we should applaud my learned friend's courage here today. I propose a toast. We're drinking with the devil! To demanding the government's secrets by disseminated before the entire courtroom. Very sorry about that. It was the only way that I could get Inspector Grayson to admit to what he's done. If I may something on that point, isn't that?
It's, about the sounds produced by the music box before. I do wonder if that was really Morse code at all.
What? What are you saying, madam?
Oh, well, it's just that I'm really rather fanatical when it comes to Morse code, you see? So much so that the whole world seems to be covered in dots and dashes to me, in fact.
Goodness, madam. An unhealthy level of obsession one feels.
But I must say that in my opinion, the sounds produced by those 2 discs were nothing more than that. A meaningless series, 2 different tones.
What? What?
Can that really be? It wasn't Morse code after all? My lord, the defense would like to listen to the music box again.
Are you off your nut? How many times do I have to tell you? Those discs contain ministerial secrets, sunshine. This courtroom is not an appropriate forum to discuss the nature of the government communications. We know McGilda conspired to trade national secrets with our enemies. Secrets acquired from Mr. Graydon. Now that the man has admitted to his crimes, we have no need to pursue the matter further. But it's really going to bother me. Miss Lestrade?
Yeah, milord?
That which you have seen today here in the courtroom has been extremely disturbing. Falsified evidence, intimidation, perjury, a grim catalog of depravity. Appalling experience to befall any child.
Come on, it ain't nothing I don't see most days in the back of slums.
I beg your pardon?
If you're weak, you pay for it. That's just how life goes.
Gina!
But look, I reckon I've worked something out today. The world ain't fair, but if you want it to change, you've got to start at home. You gotta change how you are yourself.
Well, that's a very laudable lesson, I would say. I eagerly look forward to your born again, Miss Lestrade, never gracing my courtroom with her presence again. Now, with regard to the murder of Mr. Pop Windybank, proprietor of the pawnbrokery business of Baker Street, I hereby declare defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade, not guilty. Yeah! Fireworks! Fireworks! That is all. Court is adjourned. On a personal note, I must say you've surprised me, my Eastern fan. Oh. Despite being a Nipponese, you saw through the pretense to the malice that festered within the Englishman. And at the same time, you saw through the grime to the surprising heart of your English client. You have the curious talent for judging character, especially considering our very difficult cultures. I don't think there's anything curious about it. Whether we're from the Empire of Great Britain or the Empire of Japan, we're all human beings. We're not so very different on the inside. You know, I took the case for one very simple reason. To lock swords with you once again here in the courtroom. You did? When I encountered you for the first time 2 months ago, it reminded me of toasting friendship and trust with another Nipponese, only to find my trust betrayed. Through you, I hope to look into the eyes of the man I once knew and try to understand. You mentioned something similar earlier today about total betrayal at the hands of the Japanese. What happened exactly? Well, you may ask. And one day, when the time comes, you will learn the answer, whether you like it or not. Alright, then I'll wait for that day if I must. Coming to be known as the Reaper of the Bailey and my retirement from service 5 years ago, it gives me cause to wonder if our meeting has some deeper purpose. So, farewell, my learned Nipponese fellow, until we meet again. It's done. It's over at last. But where's Iris disappeared to? Congratulations, Gina. I knew it all along. I knew that you were innocent. Well, you did what you said, Mr. Naruto. You believe in me right up to the end. You're as odd as your name. What's odd about it? I told you I had faith in you, didn't I? No one ever asked before, see? Kept me a promise, I mean, properly? That's awful. I figured something out today. All my life, growing up in the slums, I never trusted no one. But that's just cause I've been scared of being stabbed in the back. I mean, the more you trust someone, the more it hurts when they let you down.
Yes, I think I can understand that. After all, I had a taste of that in trial 2 months ago. I chose to trust someone and it paid for it. That betrayal left a big scar. You know though, Gina, I worked something out quite recently too. Trusting in someone else. Really an exercise in learning to trust yourself. And when your gut tells you it's the right thing to do and your trust is awarded, there's no better feeling in the world. I think I have you to thank for reminding me of that valuable lesson. Oh, well, if you say so. Don't make a fat lot of sense to me though. I'm trying to say that putting my faith in you, Gina, been a real pleasure. For crying out loud, pack it in. I suppose I sort of feel the same way. I mean, sometimes trusting someone else is, you know, alright. Thanks. This is the way I see it, Ryosuke. A defense lawyer is only good as his faith in his client. And that comes down to how much faith he has in himself. After this experience, I'm starting to feel like I understand what you mean, Kazuma. And I'm living up to your expectations. Am I turning out to be the lawyer you believe I could be? Pardon the interruption. Well, what the deuce does a man have to do to be noticed around here, my dear fellow? That voice. It's too late for that voice now, Mr. Naruhodo. I've been standing here patiently in the corner of the room for an eternity. Ha ha ha! Yes, it was me all along. I would have said when finally noticed me. But you people with your instant blabbling. Mr. Sholmes.
Ha ha! Yes, it was me all along, you see? I'd assume you were being taken back to the hospital, to be honest. Indeed I was, but I managed to escape again. Oh. I happen to be aware of one or two forebills of the doctor who was tending to me. I merely made my knowledge of them known to the man, and he happily issued me with a leave of absence. How very above board. But enough of my adventures. That was a fine victory, Mr. Naruhodo. You tireless efforts just rewarded, I feel. Congratulations are in order. As a close friend, I tip my hat to you. Oh, thank you.
Huh. Some great detective you are. Great at being cold as ice, maybe.
Have I irked you in some way, Miss Lestrade?
While you've been having a snooze in your nice soft bed, some of us have been fighting for our lives.
Ah, well, that bullet did cause me to lose a substantial amount of blood, it's true. So I have indeed been feeling somewhat cold, not perhaps as cold as ice, but, well, have a feel.
Could you take your hands off my neck, please, Mr. Sholmes?
And, in some way, I suppose, congratulations are in order for you too, Miss Lestrade.
What's that supposed to mean? Why so half-hearted?
Well, naturally, it isn't my intention to alarm you, but... an inquiry in a trial with the particular prosecutor is perhaps a little precarious.
Well done, Mr. Sholmes. Not alarming in the slightest. Oh, the Reaper, you mean? Because anyone who's found not guilty in trial was working on winds up dead anyway, is that it?
The very point I was trying to make. And exemplary by the fate of Mr. McGill, in fact. Ah, but of course, I pay no attention to such irrational drivel myself.
Yeah, well, it don't bother me.
Oh, really?
Of course not. The way I see it, the Reaper's a bit like I'm upstairs.
Him upstairs? You mean like God?
Yeah, I'm upstairs. Knows what, right? He knows what people are like on the inside. He won't have the wrong end of the stick. There are some cubs that like to bug Shredder what are rotten to the core. At the end of the day, I'm upstairs making sure they get what they deserve.
I suppose that's one way of looking at it. Divine justice is one thing, though. The Reaper taking matters into his own hands and claiming lives is another.
Well, I ain't like McGiddle's old this world, so I ain't scared. I got principles, see?
A trait in which it is to be admired, Miss Lestrade.
Oi, just give a rest, alright.
As I was saying, congratulations are in order. The news of your acquittal was very welcome news to me indeed. Let me express my heartfelt congratulations, Gina.
Well, there you are, Hurley. How long have you been here? Honestly, I went to the main entrance especially to meet you there.
Ah, Iris, my dear, I do apologize. But wait until I tell you what happened. This pair made utter fools of themselves.
What happened?
As you know, I have a penchant of disguise. I was hiding in this room just as a bailiff. But these dolts didn't notice my presence at all. Ha ha! They had no idea. Can you imagine, Iris? Would you credit it?
I'm not sure really.
I beg your pardon?
I'm sorry, Hurley, but you just don't have the weighty presence you seem to think you have. In fact, you really ought to be careful about that. It's going to land you in trouble one day.
I'll be careful.
Ouch. Anyway, it's such a shame.
Oh, excuse me.
I was hoping to throw a party for Jeannie tonight, but you won't be able to come, will you? Don't look, I'm going to be nowhere for a while. I'm gonna head to the judge's powder. I got stuff to make amends for, apparently. All them offenses. What was it again? Breaking and entering, taking the charter stuff, whatnot, log, blah, 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 blah.
Yes, I think you'll find that basically being a pickpocket is the main offense.
But diamond ain't an offense. It's a job, ain't it?
I don't think so.
Still, it has got me thinking all this. Maybe I should start looking for another line of work. I mean, you didn't start off as a lawyer, did ya, Otto?
Well, no, but I was never a pickpocket.
Well, anyway, I reckon I could make a change. I'm gonna do something for all of them, like they did from the slums. Something that makes a difference for him. That's a wonderful idea, Ginny. I'm sure you can do it. What is it? Nothing.
Miss Gina Lestrade? The prison carriage has arrived, ma'am. Come with me to rear gate at once.
Right. Well, looks like I'm off then.
Yes, goodbye, Gina. And good luck.
Otto?
Yes?
Hey, yo!
Ah! What was that for?
I, don't know. I mean, I don't know what to say, so...
Ah, indeed. Perhaps the situation calls for a phrase hither or missing from your vocabulary, Miss Lestrade. On occasions such as this, I would recommend a simple thank you.
Oh. Oh, yes. It's good advice, Jeannie. Right, I see. Well... Thanks, Odo. Thank you for everything, what you've done, for believing in me.
Not at all. In fact, that should be my line. Thank you, Gina. Well, there she goes. I wonder if I'll ever see her again. Well, quite the indomitable picture purse.
Oh, I nearly forgot. I bought a paper outside. It's a special edition. This child is all over the front page. Pickpocket innocent proven. Isn't it wonderful?
You should have shown it to Gina, Iris. She would have been thrilled.
Oh no, how silly of me. Ah, but anyway, would you like the good news or the bad news?
Not again.
Well, what do you say, Runo? Hurley?
As usual, I think I'd rather get the bad news out of the way. Absolutely not. I have no intention of listening to anything good but good news.
And there you have it. How people answer that question says a lot about them, doesn't it?
Let's not go there.
Alright then, maybe let's start with the good news this time. The rain has finally stopped. It was record level of rainfall apparently.
Well, that is good news indeed. We can journey back in a greater comfort.
Alright then, what's the bad news? The huge storm has left the seas very choppy. The channel in particular is awful, so sailings out of the Dover has been delayed for a day or more. Wait, Dover? That's right, if we head to the station immediately, we may still make it in time to wave Susie off. But, there won't be a train, surely. We could be that lucky.
Who do you think I am, Mr. Naruhodo?
Mr. Sholmes?
I rushed to the Victoria Station early and made arrangements for the Special Express. If we hurry now, we shall dare be on time for dinner. And I know of a fine restaurant that serves the most delicious baked sole.
The great detective does it again!
Indeed he does! I happen to be aware of a number of the rail transport directors' foibles. What? I merely made my knowledge of them known to man and be happily laid on the locomotive elementary.
Just an idea, but it might be wise to stop manipulating people that way. What are we waiting for then? To London Victoria!